Alyssa, Communications and Development Assistant at the Bronx River Alliance. I'm so excited that you're here with us today at the New York City Field Guide.
Thank you for having me. I'm really excited to be here.
Before we get to all of the incredible things the Bronx River has to offer, tell me what was there before the Alliance got involved with revitalizing the area.
Sure. So honestly, the Bronx River was an open sewer. It was a dump. A lot of the industrial era left it polluted with very poor water quality and essentially a place that was not accessible to the community and needed a lot of love. Like there wasn't wildlife, there wasn't things that you would naturally see on a river.
And so how did local residents in the South Bronx become sort of the catalyst to reclaim the river?
So it's interesting because communities along the river are the people who essentially started the revitalization of the river. It was very isolated groups down the corridor, and they would do random events like cleanups and have all sorts of programming taking place on the river, but these people weren't actually speaking, and they were so isolated that they didn't know one another were making such strides in the community. And that was the catalyst, because once those people started realizing that they were all doing the work, they started to garner attention, and that was in the 70s. And after the funding started, that's when the real work began, because the awareness was there.
And I remember reading an article where they pulled out hundreds of tires and like cars and really sort of alarming things from the river in the initial days of the cleanup. Is that true?
Yes, that's absolutely true. The event occurred at Starlight Park, and what's lovely about that is that we have a park there now that you can go visit. So for that event, particularly YMPJ and the Point CDC had a lot of part in activating the community to be not only aware and educated, but to advocate for themselves and to step up and say, we want access to this land and this is our right.
And a lot of those community leaders that you mentioned were sort of key in the overall environmental justice movement in New York City.
Right.
So for those who may not be familiar with this movement, can you just give us a little quick background?
All right, so environmental justice is essentially like people having access to the environment, to a clean environment, to clean air, to clean water, to having access to public land, parkland, green spaces and the like, but also making sure that they're not living next to things like waste transfer facilities or just heavily polluted areas where they can enjoy their lives and live to the fullest.
So a lot of what the Bronx River Alliance does is really tied to this idea of equity, and
Yes.
so that we can strive for a balance of burdens and benefits in a neighborhood. We're not saying we want to put everything in someone else's neighborhood, but historically speaking in New York, a lot of the environmental burdens, bus transfer stations, garbage dumps,
Right.
hazardous manufacturing uses, were in low-income communities of color.
Right.
And so the Bronx River revitalization is such a fantastic symbol of how those communities said, no, we
Right.
deserve better, and we want to make a change, and we deserve that change. And so talk to me about what that change looks like today. What can we find in the Bronx River?
Everything robust, I have to admit. The programming that exists at the Bronx River now is truly testament to the community advocacy work that was done in the past. There's things like free community paddling. A lot of wildlife has returned, so I mean that's an asset in itself. And we also have a lot of educational opportunities for students, like internships and field trips for teachers if they're interested in bringing their students outdoors. There's so many things there, and you could take a walk, be right along the waterfront, and completely forget you're in the Bronx.
And so what has been the impact of this revitalization on the community itself?
While we have all this great programming, while we see all this, the wildlife returning, is really beautiful to be amongst that, we also have to be wary of something called green gentrification. Essentially, when the land is enhanced or the properties are enhanced and they start to invite people who aren't a part of the community, and the property value goes up and displacement occurs. And truly, a lot of the work that we do is for the community, and what we don't want is to see community displaced. So essentially, the message that I would like to send with that is just that the people who did the work, the people who suffered from the plight of the Bronx River, should be the ones to enjoy it.
That's so beautiful. And of course, while they're there, and we want them to stay
Yeah.
and encourage those connections to really enable and empower those local residents to be the ones to benefit, I'm guessing that you do want visitors from all over the city to come as well to take part in your programming?
We have all types of programming that people from all over the city, but also out of state come and they partake in these events. And a lot of the time they didn't know that the Bronx River existed, and that's why they came. And majority of the time it's because they learned that we're the only freshwater river in the New York City area.